Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here. So the Washington Commanders just signed two very intriguing players to their practice squad. Former national championship Donovan Edwards and cornerback Darius Rush. Two athletic freaks, and we're going to talk about that in today's video. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and that notification bell as well so you never miss a video. We're like 150 subscribers away from 16,000. Let's get there before the start of the season. It's free and we're super close, and I know we can get there even from this video if everyone subscribes who's watching. But Donovan Edwards and Darius Rush. So we're going to start with Darius Rush. I know a lot of people talked about Donovan Edwards yesterday. Not a lot of people talked about Darius Rush, so we're going to talk about Darius Rush today. But we're going to talk about both of them. So Darius Rush, cornerback, a 5th round pick out of South Carolina, has an amazing athletic profile, and shout out to Rio for this. 6'1", almost 6'2". The weight's fine, not great, not terrible. 200 pounds. Vertical leap, is decent. 35-inch vertical leap. The broad jump was decent as well. The 40-yard dash was elite, a 4.36 40-yard dash. And then you can see the splits as well. Arm length great, hand size good as well, I believe. And his profile was the 9.8, which is very high. And he was people thought he was going to get drafted a little bit earlier than he did. He didn't end up getting drafted super highly, 5th round pick. But here's him in the Senior Bowl, absolutely running the route for the receiver there and makes the interception. So he did a really good job in that clip, and that got him a lot of hype. I'll pull up some of his other stuff too, just so we get a basis for, did not mean to do that, but just so you get a basis of what he's done in the league. Hasn't had a lot of PT, has bounced around a bunch of teams and practice squads as well. So we'll go ahead and see this, but was with the Browns in the past. Like I said, 5th round pick, and that was with the Colts. And he's still young. He's 25 years old, still has some potential. So played with the Steelers for 2 years. Again, was drafted by the Colts, was with the Browns. So he's definitely bounced around a bunch of different spots. This is not a guy I see as a high impact guy, but he has some potential, and maybe you can develop him down the line. There's some connections there with Joe Witt, and then Dan Quinn as well, I believe, the guy that coached, was the cornerbacks coach at South Carolina, I believe, where Darius Rush was teammates. There's a crazy connection, but I saw it on Twitter, was teammates with Joe Witt in high school or college, and coached or played with Dan Quinn. I don't know, but there's some connection there. And then let's talk about Donovan Edwards, also super athletic, a much bigger name than Darius Rush, but also he plays a skill position, also played at a big school that won a natty when he was there. So the hand size, arm length, you see that. Height is 5'11", 7.33 RAS score there. The weight's fine. The vertical leap's very good, 39 inches, which is ranks very highly. And then his 40-yard dash time was unofficial, but 4.45. You see the 20-yard and 10-yard split there. So very athletic, and he was the Jets' leading rusher. I was about to say receiver, but leading rusher. Was with Michigan, obviously, won the natty, came back, was on the cover of NCAA, 25, and had a little bit, had a disappointing season, and led the Jets in rushing, like I said, as an undrafted free agent, was released, and despite leading the team during rushing, and, he's the only running back on the practice squad for the Washington Commanders. So interesting there, but, they already have a bunch of guys on the active roster. They have 4. Some teams only carry 3, so we'll see there. But some of his stats, we'll go over him. He had a good, very good collegiate career. 2021, not a lot of stuff, but 2022, almost 1,000 yards, 7.1 yards a carry. Like, that is some very good football by him. That was his best year by far. If especially off of the efficiency and receiving wise, still pretty good. And he's a good receiving back. If you really look at it, 250, 200 yards, 265. So pretty good overall. And then the year they won the natty, he was not nearly as efficient. The least efficient he was in his career. He was behind Blake Corum, who was an absolute stud in college. Not hasn't been balling out and in the NFL with the Rams, but he's behind Kyron Williams, and they drafted a guy, They drafted someone this year, but was going to be the starting running back 2024. And just didn't do a lot. 12 games, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown, 83 receiving yards. So definitely a little bit of a letdown in his senior year and his junior year for sure, coming off a huge sophomore season at Michigan where he almost had 1,000 rushing yards and was averaging over 7 yards a carry, which is insane, and also had 200 receiving yards. So both of these guys, they're practice squad guys. You're not expecting a lot out of these guys. They're practice squad guys for a reason. They got cut, but from the 53-man roster. No teams claimed them. So these are guys that weren't necessarily good enough to make the initial 53 on any team. So they're work in progresses. Both guys pretty young. Darius Rush obviously been in the league for a little bit longer than Edwards has. Edwards has got some time to develop. And, they chose him, I guess, over a guy like Kaz Allen, who, I was going to, maybe thought they would keep him on the practice squad. I don't know if they kept Demetric Felton on the practice squad. I guess they don't have a running back, so they didn't. So Donovan Edwards is the only guy, and they decided to keep him or sign him over keeping those two guys. And I think they were kind of high on Demetric Felton, so that does say a lot that they brought him in over those guys. And he'll be a developmental piece over the next few weeks, hopefully, or really the whole season and maybe more. Hopefully we don't ever see him in a game this year, because that means a lot of our guys are down unless he's really balling out in practice and gets a chance. But these practice squad guys, for the most part, like there's some guys on there that you have just call ups, like Sheldon Day. He's a perfect example. And Jalen Holmes. Those guys are on the practice squad, but they're not really there to develop. They're there to, we have an injury or we get some call-ups for the games, which they do every week. We're going to call these guys up, but you only have a limited amount, so they might not, they can't use them all on those, players. But those guys are there for, in case something happens to, a starter, maybe gets sick during a game, or, maybe he gets hurt and he's out for 4 or 5 games. They put him on IR, and then you can call this guy up and promote him to the active roster. And it's just an easy way to do that. And then a lot of the other guys are just, that they're developing. They're developing, and, you hope maybe next offseason they're able to push and make it into the 53-man roster, because you always love to get younger. The Commanders are an older team, so you would love to get younger as a squad, and developing your practice squad and getting them eventually to be on the back end of the year 53, and maybe after that a little bit more is good. I feel like the guy that's like in both worlds is Ja'Cory Brooks, because he is a guy that would probably be the next man up if they call up a receiver. I would at least have him as the next man up, but also he's a developmental guy as well. So he's the guy on the practice squad. Definitely, I believe most fans have the highest hopes for him out of anyone on the practice squad, but I think Donovan Edwards is probably going to be up there as well with, Ja'Cory Brooks. So that's it for today's video. Just want to go over those two guys, give you guys some information on them, and just talk about their outlook for the season and just a little bit of practice squad talk. So that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.